I never imagined that a gentle tap on the inside of my bedroom door would rewrite the way I see my family, and, more importantly, the way I see myself. It was one of those nights when the world seemed to hold its breath, the kind of stillness that only appears when everyone is home but lost in separate thoughts. The thin sliver of hallway light slipped beneath the door, painting a narrow gold line on the floorboards, and for a heartbeat everything felt suspended, as if time itself had taken a brief pause. Hold on just a moment before we continue. If this story is touching something in you, please take a second to like this video and subscribe. It genuinely makes a difference and helps me bring you more stories like this one. I also want to hear from you. Write in the comments, where are you right now? Are you tucked away in a peaceful village where stars fill the sky, or surrounded by the hum and glow of a city that never sleeps? Then, without warning, there it was, a careful knock. Not the casual rap my brother usually used when he needed a charger or wanted to complain about dinner, but a measured, almost reverent knock that carried weight. It lingered in the air, a silent invitation that felt both fragile and profound. "Yeah," I called, my voice automatically lighter than the nervous flutter in my chest. The door eased open just a few inches at first. My brother, the one I'd always thought of as steady, the quiet anchor of our household, stood there with his hand still on the knob, shoulders hunched as though bracing himself for whatever might come next. He's 2 years older, the sibling I'd watched grow into someone who could fix a leaky faucet or carry a conversation without ever raising his voice. Seeing him hesitate sent a subtle ripple of anticipation through me. "May I come in?" he asked, voice low, careful, as if he feared startling the very moment he'd been waiting for. "Sure," I replied, pushing my laptop aside and sitting up. "What's on your mind?" He stepped inside and closed the door behind him, turning the lock with a soft click that resonated louder than any slam could. That tiny sound was the first indicator that this was no ordinary visit. He leaned against the doorframe for a moment, eyes fixed on the floor, fingers lightly rubbing his palms as if warming them against an invisible chill. "I didn't mean to interrupt," he began, "but I really needed to talk to you alone." His words hung in the room, heavy yet hopeful. I nodded and gestured to the edge of the bed. "Please, have a seat." He hesitated again, then crossed the room and settled down, leaving a respectful distance between us. The soft glow of my bedside lamp washed his face in a gentle amber, revealing faint lines around his eyes that I'd never noticed before. For a breathless second, silence settled between us, not awkward, but thick with unspoken meaning, as if we were both holding our breath, waiting for the next word to surface. "I'm not great at starting these kinds of talks," he admitted, exhaling slowly. "So I'll just say what I can, the best I can." I tucked my legs beneath me and gave him my full attention. "Take your time." Our eyes met for a heartbeat, and in that glance I felt a mixture of trust and vulnerability that made my chest tighten in an oddly tender way. It was as if a bridge had formed in an instant, connecting two worlds that usually floated past each other. "I've been carrying something for a while," he said, voice barely above a whisper. "Something I should have spoken about sooner. I didn't want to worry anyone, especially you." The simple word, "you," landed like a stone in still water, soft, but with ripples that spread outward. We rarely said the important things to each other. We joked, we argued, we coexisted. Yet here, in this dimly lit room, there was a depth that went beyond surface chatter. "You're not worrying me," I replied gently. "You're talking to me. That's different." A faint smile touched his lips, as if my response gave him permission to keep going. "I've been feeling lost," he confessed. "Not sure who I am, where I'm headed. Everyone expects me to have it together, and I do too sometimes." Relief flickered across his face, as though a weight he'd been shouldering for weeks finally found a place to rest. "I didn't realize how lonely that felt until recently," he continued. "Then I thought about you, how you're still figuring things out, but you're honest about it. You don't pretend." I laughed softly, shaking my head. "Trust me, I pretend all the time. I'm just not very good at hiding it." His chuckle was light, and the tension in the room eased just a touch, settling into something quieter, more intimate, a space where two people could truly see each other. He went on to share the pressures he'd been feeling, expectations from our parents, the weight of his own ambitions, the nights spent staring at the ceiling, wondering whether he'd chosen the right path, whether he was letting anyone down. I listened, genuinely listening, not cutting him off, not offering solutions. It felt like a gift, the trust he placed in me with such raw honesty. As he spoke, I noticed details I'd never observed before, the way his voice softened when he confessed fear, how his restless hands finally stilled once his words found a rhythm, how speaking his truth seemed to straighten his posture even as it exposed his vulnerability. When he finally fell silent, the room seemed warmer, as if the very air had been altered by his confession. "I'm really glad you told me," I said, the sincerity in my voice matching the sincerity of his words. He nodded, eyes glistening just a fraction, as if some hidden part of him had been acknowledged. "I didn't want to be the strong one tonight," he confessed. "I just wanted to be your brother." That sentence struck something inside me, a realization that connection isn't always forged in grand gestures, but in the willingness to open a door carefully, to step into someone else's world without hesitation. We lingered in that space for a while longer, talking about nothing and everything, about the strange weight of adulthood, about the terror of admitting we don't have a map. Outside, the house remained still, oblivious to the quiet but profound shift happening behind my bedroom door. When he finally rose to leave, the door clicked shut once more, soft and deliberate. I lay back on my mattress, staring at the ceiling, feeling older in understanding rather than in years. I realized that connection is built in moments like this, when someone trusts you with their truth, and you choose to meet it with care. The next morning arrived with a softness, as if the world had been brushed with pastel. Sunlight filtered through the curtains in pale stripes, and for a few seconds I lay there, half dreaming that the night before might have been a figment of my imagination. Yet the warm, steady thrum in my chest told me it was real. The familiar sounds of the house, the clink of a mug, the low hum of the coffee maker, took on a new significance. They felt like an invitation. I slipped into a hoodie, padded down the hallway, and stepped into the kitchen where my brother stood by the window, eyes fixed on the backyard, watching the world wake up. "Morning," I said. He turned, and a small, genuine smile spread across his face, the kind that doesn't need effort. "Morning." We stood there for a heartbeat, each of us aware of the space between us and how differently it felt now, not awkward but charged with meaning. "Coffee?" he asked, lifting the pot. "Please," I replied. "You're a hero." He poured me a mug and slid it across the counter. Our fingers didn't touch, yet the closeness made me acutely aware of the moment. I wrapped my hands around the warm ceramic and leaned against the counter, watching him move around the kitchen with an ease I'd always taken for granted. "I was worried I made things weird," he confessed after a pause, his voice still careful but lighter than the night before. "Not weird," I said quickly. "Just real." He nodded, as if that simple affirmation settled something deep inside him. We sat at the small kitchen table, the same one that had witnessed countless rushed breakfasts, and let the conversation unfold slowly, piece by piece, like we were learning a new language made of honesty. He told me he'd slept better than he had in weeks. I admitted that I'd felt an unexpected calm, as if an unspoken burden had finally been given air. We laughed about small things, about how serious he'd looked in my doorway, about how dramatic life feels when you're lying awake at night. But beneath the humor lay a deeper current, a recognition that we'd stepped into a new understanding of each other. Later that afternoon, we found ourselves on the back porch. The air was cool, the sky a muted gray that felt comforting. I curled up on the old swing with a blanket, and he settled into the chair beside it, stretching his legs out. "I keep thinking about what you said," he murmured, staring at his hands. "About not having a map." "Yeah, what about it?" I asked, leaning back, the swing creaking softly. "I've been angry at myself for not knowing everything already," he said, as if there's some invisible deadline I've missed. "I think most of us feel that way," I replied. "We just don't say it out loud." He glanced at me, really looked at me. "You're wiser than you think." I laughed. "Don't spread that rumor. I have a reputation to protect." He chuckled, then grew thoughtful again. "I don't say this enough, but I'm proud of you." Those words hit me harder than I expected. My throat tightened, and I looked away, pretending to adjust the blanket. "Thanks," I whispered. "That means a lot." There was something grounding about being seen by someone who'd known me my whole life, who'd witnessed my awkward phases, my mistakes, my small victories. It made the praise feel earned, not inflated. Our conversation drifted to childhood memories, the time we got lost at the county fair, the summer we built a terrible treehouse that lasted only one storm. We laughed until our sides hurt, the sound echoing into the quiet neighborhood. Even in the laughter, there was a new awareness, a realization that we were no longer just kids replaying old stories, we were adults choosing to reconnect on a deeper level. At one point he grew quiet again, staring at the overcast sky. "I'm glad you're here," he said, "not just in the house, but in my life." A steady warmth spread through me. "I'm not going anywhere," I replied. That evening, as dinner simmered on the stove and familiar aromas filled the house, I realized vulnerability isn't a one-time act. It's a practice, a series of choices to show up honestly even when it feels uncomfortable. When I retreated back to my room, I left my door slightly ajar, the hallway light spilling in softly. It felt symbolic, even if no one else noticed. I lay on my bed, listening to the house settle, and thought about how easy it is to miss moments like this. How many conversations never happen because no one wants to be the first to knock. I didn't know what the future would bring for either of us, and I didn't need to. What mattered was that something had shifted. A deeper trust had taken root, built on mutual respect and shared honesty. And for the first time in a long while, that felt like more than enough. Weeks, days that followed, a few days passed, yet the feeling from that night and the next morning didn't fade. If anything, it settled into the house like a quiet hum, something you don't always notice until it stops. Our conversations became more intentional. Not heavy, not dramatic, just real. We checked in with each other more, asked questions we used to skip. One evening, rain began just before sunset, thick drops tapping against the windows, blurring the world outside until everything looked softer, less defined. I was on the living room floor, surrounded by a stack of old photo albums I'd pulled out on a whim while cleaning. The scent of dust and aging paper felt strangely comforting. My brother paused in the doorway when he saw me. "Didn't know we still had these," he said, stepping closer. "I'd forgotten about them." "I'd forgotten, too," I replied, flipping a page. "Look at this one. I had that terrible haircut for like 2 years." He laughed, dropping onto the couch and leaning forward. "You were determined it made you look grown up." It absolutely did not. We leafed through the album slowly, page by page, touching the past together, seeing proof that we'd already survived awkward phases, disappointments, and change, made the uncertainty we both felt now seem a little less scary. He picked up a photo and held it for a long moment, a picture of us as kids, sitting on the front steps with scraped knees and sunburned noses, grinning as if the world were simple. "I miss how easy things felt," he said quietly. "I don't think it was easier," I said. "I think we just didn't know enough yet to be afraid." He nodded slowly, as if that landed somewhere important. The rain outside picked up, thunder rolling low and distant. The living room light cast long shadows, and the house felt safely enclosed. We talked about things we'd never really spoken about before, not just dreams, but disappointments, the paths we thought we'd be on by now, the moments we felt we'd failed quietly without anyone noticing. At one point he rubbed his face with his hands. "I don't like admitting when I'm overwhelmed," he confessed. "I always feel like I should be able to handle it." "I get that," I said, "but handling it alone isn't the same as handling it well." He looked at me surprised, then thoughtful. "You're right." There was a long pause after that, not uncomfortable, just full, the kind of silence where words aren't missing, they're simply resting. Later, the power flickered briefly, the lights dimming before returning. "Figures?" I laughed softly. "Emotional breakthroughs always come with weather." He smiled. "Dramatic timing runs in the family." We made tea and sat on opposite ends of the couch, wrapped in our own blankets. The rain eventually slowed to a steady drizzle, its rhythm calming. I realized how rare it is to feel completely understood without needing to explain yourself, how rare it is to be listened to without being fixed. "I've been thinking about making some changes," he said after a while. "Nothing drastic, just choosing myself a little more." That made me smile. "That sounds like a good place to start. I don't think I would have gotten there without talking to you," he admitted. "You helped more than you know." I felt a quiet pride mixed with humility. "You did the hard part," I said. "You were honest." When the night wound down, he stood, stretched, then paused. "Thanks for being here for real," he said. "Always," I replied. After he went to bed, I lingered on the couch a little longer, listening to the rain taper off. I thought about how growth doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it shows up as a careful knock, a shared memory, a conversation held gently in the dark. I realized I was learning something, too, about my own capacity to be present, to hold space without losing myself, to connect deeply while staying grounded in respect and clarity. Before heading to my room, I turned off the living room light and glanced back once more at the quiet space. It felt different now, warmer, like something fragile but strong had been built there. Reflections in solitude. That night, lying in bed, I didn't feel the restless pull of uncertainty that usually kept me awake. I felt steady, connected, aware that meaningful change doesn't always come from big decisions, but from small, honest moments shared between people who choose to see each other clearly. And that, I realized, was its own kind of courage. The week after the rain felt like a quiet turning point. Nothing dramatic happened, no big announcements, no sudden transformations. And yet everything felt rearranged, like furniture moved just a few inches closer to where it was always meant to be. I noticed it in the small things, first the way my brother asked how my day was and actually waited for the answer. The way I felt comfortable knocking on his door instead of sending a text from the other side of the hall. We shared meals without distractions, phones forgotten on counters, conversations drifting and circling back to things that mattered. One evening we ended up cooking dinner together, something we hadn't done in years. The kitchen filled with the sound of chopping vegetables and a playlist humming quietly in the background. He handed me a spoon to taste the sauce, and we both laughed when I made an exaggerated face. "Too much salt?" he asked. "Just enough confidence," I replied. He smiled, shaking his head. "You've always had a way with words." As we ate, we talked about the future in a way that felt lighter than before, not as a list of expectations, but as possibilities. He mentioned taking a short break from the constant grind, maybe traveling a bit, maybe just slowing down enough to hear himself think. I shared my own uncertainties, the pressure I felt to have my life figured out before I'd really had a chance to explore it. "You don't have to rush," he said. "You're allowed to grow at your own pace." Hearing that from him felt grounding, like permission I didn't know I'd been waiting for. It reminded me that guidance doesn't always come from people who have all the answers, but from those willing to walk alongside you while you ask the questions. Later that night we sat outside on the steps, the air cool and clear. The neighborhood was quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you feel like you're part of something larger just by being still. A few stars peeked through the dark sky, and I wrapped my arms around myself, breathing it all in. "I'm glad we talked that night," he said suddenly. "Me too," I replied. "It changed things," he added. "In a good way." I nodded, feeling the truth of that settle deep inside me. There was no need to say more. Some understandings don't need to be unpacked, they just need to be honored. Quiet turning point. As days turned into another week, I found myself reflecting more on what that careful knock had set in motion. I realized how easy it is to underestimate the power of listening, how often we rush to fill silence instead of letting it speak. Being there for my brother hadn't required fixing anything. It had only required presence, patience, and respect. And in offering that, I discovered something about myself, too, a quiet confidence, a sense that I could be a steady place for someone else without losing my own balance, that I could grow through connection, not despite it. On the morning he left for a short trip, a decision he finally made, we stood in the driveway as he loaded his bag into the car. The sun was just rising, painting the sky in soft colors. He turned to me and pulled me into a brief, warm hug. "Thank you," he said. "Sif," I replied. "And don't forget to call." He laughed. "I won't." Watching him drive away, a mix of emotions rose inside me: pride, gratitude, a gentle sense of closure paired with the knowledge that this wasn't an ending, just a new chapter for both of us. I went back inside and stood for a moment in the quiet house, the same hallway, the same doors, and yet everything felt different, more open, more intentional. That night, as I lay in bed, I thought about how personal growth doesn't always come from chasing something new. Sometimes it comes from looking at what's already there with fresh eyes, from choosing honesty over habit, from opening a door carefully, and being brave enough to step through it together. If there's one thing this experience taught me, it's that meaningful connection is built on mutual respect and the courage to be vulnerable. And when you allow space for that, you don't just help someone else find their footing, you find your own.